This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social. I'm delighted to be joined once again by David Higgins of Duco Events. We're here at the Dillian Whyte Joseph Parker press conference in London. How are you today, David?
Oh, it's fantastic to be back in the UK. Honestly, pretty jet lagged, haven't slept for 30 odd hours, but pleased to be here and make one of the biggest heavyweight fights of the year.
You're looking very well.
Oh, thank you. So are you.
Thank you very much. So yes, a bit of a whirlwind deal this. By general consensus, it's been done within 48 hours.
Yeah, so look, we were looking at options and having discussions with people like Brian Jennings and Ustinov, etc. But you intuitively it didn't quite feel right. Eddie was obviously having problems with Pulev and White. So I rang Eddie last Friday and I said, hey, can we make something happen in the UK? He said that, not really, my guys are tied up. I said, what about this Pulev-White situation? I said, what if Parker fought White? Would that not be a pay-per-view show and it would be a big one? He said, you know what, I think you're right, it would be a pay-per-view show. I said, well, wouldn't White make a lot more money fighting Parker? And then, you know, if you're going to take a risk, you may as well be paid for that risk in what is a very risky business. So Eddie agreed. And so we had a meeting of minds and decided I'd go to Parker, Team Parker, and he would go to White and see if the guys would agree to fight. And they both agreed. So the next day we were working on commercial terms, and so the whole deal was sort of done in 48 hours.
Quite stark contrast to the Anthony Joshua Joseph Parker negotiations. What changed? What was different about it this time around?
Well, I think Eddie and I had worked together before, and so you can speed things up. Like the last, it was a 3-month negotiation last time, and this time was like 2 or 3 days. We had a template to work with on how we worked together, so we were able to roll aspects of the previous deal. And I think I initially said to Eddie, this is one where everyone's just got to be quick and fair. There's no time for haggling. So we either quick, we're fair, we make the deal, or it's off. And so everyone had a quick meeting of minds, and everyone sort of felt that the terms were fair. And so it's serendipitous, and I think it's a win for everyone, including the fans.
Today was quite a mellow press conference. In the past, you and Eddie have had things to say to each other, as has Dillian Whyte to pretty much everybody he's come into contact with. Can we expect to see it, as you say, develop into a train wreck going forward?
I think Dillian's going to bring the trash talk, and watch him emerge from that trash can as the promotion unfolds. And Joseph is a very intelligent, witty guy when he's prodded. So if Dillian comes at Joseph, expect some fire back.
As a promoter, coming off the back of the Anthony Joshua loss, was there any temptation for you to potentially turn this fight down, maybe bring Joseph back in a slightly less high-profile fight and give him more room to develop and work his way back into title contention?
Look, that's just time wasting. We're in a risky business. You could lose one of those so-called smaller fights. You could get injured. So we prefer to take the big fights, and if you're going to take a risk, you might as well be paid for it. And so, Joe's whole career, we've fought often. We haven't shied away, and the same applies here. We've just made a great big international promotion where both guys have a chance of winning, and both guys are going to do well out of it.
With the bookmakers, Joseph Parker opens as a slight favourite. Now, I know you've told me in the past that you're far from a boxing expert, you're a promoter, but why do you feel that is?
I think Joseph showed class against Joshua, and if he fights the way he fought against Joshua with a bit more pressure, perhaps a touch more class, I think he can close out Dillian Whyte. Then again, Whyte, anything can happen, and Whyte comes to fight, so that's what makes it. I haven't heard a fan say that they don't like the idea of this fight.
You mentioned in the press conference about the referee in the last bout. You had some line, I can't remember, it was a late night last night, about him being from the mafia or something like that. Was that any impact on your decision to come back to the UK, the refereeing in the Anthony Joshua fight?
The contract wasn't the problem. We had the right to object to the referee, so our team signed off on that referee. The guy just then had a shocker. I think he was starstruck by Anthony Joshua, and Joseph's got a great chin, so if they were allowed to fight on the inside and trade, anything could have happened, but the referee was determined to keep them apart. Joshua fought a disciplined strategy of keeping Joseph right at arm's length for 12 rounds, and he did so. So if we earned another opportunity against Joshua, one, if the referee behaves like that, we'll make a scene in the fight. We'll say, what are you doing, mate? Let them fight. We should have probably given it to the referee during, but also if they're allowed to come on the inside, then it might be a different fight. So we want to earn a rematch and learn from that defeat and put more pressure on and knock out Anthony Joshua.
Something that I spoke to Eddie Hearn about, this doesn't really come with any eliminator title, much like the Pulev fight would have been or the Ortiz fight would have been, and I'm sure Joseph had opportunities to fight an eliminator. That being said, if either guy wins this fight convincingly, do they go straight to the head of the queue for a world title shot?
Well, we could ask for this fight to be given some status. We haven't yet. We'll probably very respectfully write to the relevant sanctioning bodies because one guy's ranked 2, I think, Dillian, and Whyte-Parker 5, so it's a legitimate fight that could be given a status. But regardless, I think it's sort of the people's eliminator. Dillian shook Joshua up and showed that his chin is questionable, and Parker took him the distance. So both guys gave Joshua a good go, but didn't do quite enough to win. But I think the winner of this fight is sitting pole position to demand a rematch.
And just finally, David, as somebody who has now, 2 experiences of working with Eddie Hearn, but certainly the first one was a very protracted public negotiation. Eddie Hearn is currently in the midst of another very protracted public negotiation in the form of Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder. What are your thoughts on that negotiation?
I think that Wilder, there's a saying in investment banking, deal making, don't stuff up what's in front of you. So Wilder's been in the risk business his whole life. He's strung together total all wins, and now there's a huge amount of money hanging there for him. I think you turn that down at your peril because you might get injured, you might sprain your ankle, you might lose to someone else. So if I was Wilder, I'd quickly make the deal and make sure that Joshua doesn't go and fight Povetkin, because Joshua might lose to Povetkin. That fight's the biggest fight in the world, or the heavyweight division, and I think Wilder and his people would be remiss not to close a deal now.
Who would you make a favourite if that fight were to happen?
I think that if Anthony Joshua fought a very cautious, disciplined plan like he did against Parker and keeps Wilder on the end of a jab, then I think he can beat Wilder. But I think if Joshua makes any mistakes or gets sloppy, then Wilder could knock him out because he's wild. So it's an interesting fight.
Okay, and just lastly, David, because I do appreciate you're extremely jet-lagged, you've had some very complimentary things to say about Eddie Hearn in the past. I believe in our interview that we did in your hotel, you called him the best promoter in the world currently. You also had some glowing things to say about him today at the press conference. With that being said, what do you make of his deal going over to America and his deal with DAZN, the online streaming platform?
I think it's exciting. I mean, they're looking to put a huge amount of money into the sport of boxing. A lot of the other sports are already tied into broadcast deals, etc. So that's a massive amount of money, and Eddie's a good operator. So I think it'll improve the boxing industry, if you like, in the United States, and then a bigger transatlantic market. So there's nothing bad about it when that sort of money is pumped into your sport.
I'm terribly sorry, but Jeff Horn versus Terence Crawford this weekend. What do you make of that fight? Your man Jeff Horn defending his title against Terence Crawford in Las Vegas.
Look, Jeff is tough. Crawford's slick. They say could be pound for pound best in the world. Jeff has shown he can upset people before. He's a massive underdog. So I don't know. Let's see what happens on Saturday.
Okay, well, David Higgins of Duco Events, thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social. Always a pleasure catching up with you. For the love of God, go home and get some sleep.
Thank you. Cheers.